Hi, this is Lou Pulsfer, and I'm going to talk about no prima donnas. And by prima donnas, I mean people who are too good or think too much of themselves to work well with publishers. And you have to work with publishers unless you're going to self-publish. Now, most of my experience is with tabletop game publishers, but I can't think why it would be different in the video game world. So my point is simple. If you cannot be a reasonable, professional person in your interaction with publishers, you're going to have to self-publish. And if you're going to have to self-publish, then you become a publisher, not a designer. So there's a disease, and that disease is the notion of game designer as hero. The person with an artistic vision gifting it to the world in much the way a composer creates music or a sculptor creates sculpture. They present to the world and say, take it or leave it. Or worse, they say, love my brilliant works, ye peons. Well, that doesn't work. It's left over from decades ago, because in the early days of the video game industry, people could try to do that. And they can still try to do that in the indie sector, but not much in the more commercial sector. We've passed the formative age of the industry. Whether that's right or not, that the heroic attitude is not desired, it's regarded in many quarters as simple, insufferable egotism. One of the reasons why game designers don't get much respect, especially in the video game world. I remember talking with one tabletop publisher who had problems with egotistic designers. He wanted to work with designers, not be dictated to by prima donnas. He said, if I'd been married 36 years, then I might be okay. That is to say, maybe I could get along with people. It's not like anything I've ever had said to me by any other publisher, but I can see the point. You have to recognize you're not God's gift to the world. Your game isn't great, though maybe it'll turn out to be great 10 to 20 years from now. In fact, if you're absolutely sure your game is great, then it isn't. I'm going to repeat that. If you're absolutely sure your game is great, then it certainly isn't. So how do you behave when you're working with publishers? Avoid cockiness. Avoid hyperbole, exaggeration. Yeah, I've heard of publishers who want passion, but that's for noobs, not pros. Pros have substance, not passion. When you deal with a publisher, be a true speaker. And of course, you should be a true speaker with everybody. If you've never heard that term, it's from Robert Heinlein, Stranger in a Strange Land. Say only what you know to be the truth. A simple example. You look at a house. The part that you can see is white. Many people would say, the house is white. But there's an assumption there. A true speaker will say, this side of the house is white, because they haven't actually seen the rest. They don't make assumptions. And if you're a truth speaker, you're less likely to get caught out by what you say or by what people say to you. Now, especially when you're pitching a game, you want to be reasonable. There was a recent Twitter thread, actual quotes from a pitch. Eric Lang, who is a well-known tabletop game designer, is the one who put this out. So I'm going to go through some of these. Quote, okay, if you actually design games, you would see why this is an amazing idea, unquote. Now, wouldn't that be a stupid thing to say to a publisher? Especially because many publishers, at least tabletop publishers, have designed games. Quote, I know these are magic cards, but imagine if the monsters were way cooler, unquote. I used to teach video game design in college. And one of the problems was that people were convinced that whatever they were going to do with their first game would be the best game ever. That they would make better stories than anybody else, better this than anybody else. And there's no reason to think that. Noobs like to think that, but nobody else is going to believe that. Why would you be doing better than people who've been doing it for a long time? Especially the guys who make Magic the Gathering, who are led by a guy who's a really sharp designer, has been doing it a long time. He's not the original designer, Mark Rosewater, but he really knows what he's doing. And of course, Magic is larger or as large as most of the rest of the tabletop game industry put together. So how would you say Imagine if the monsters were way cooler? That's just not smart. It's foolish. Here's another one, quote, "No, I'm not worried about a lawsuit. That's what the publisher is for," unquote. No, you, the designer, are the one in line for the lawsuit, not the publisher. Contracts often specify that you are the one who's liable. This is an ignorant statement. And when you make ignorant statements to a publisher, they tend to discount everything you say. Quote, "It's really easy to learn. No more than half an hour and you'll have all the basics," unquote. Well, duh. Easy to learn nowadays is no more than 5 minutes. This person is out in cloud cuckoo land. Quote, "I didn't change anything from the last version, but maybe you'll like it this time," unquote. Another form of cloud cuckoo land. What's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result? Or sheer egotism? If they didn't care for it the last time, and they might have made suggestions, why would they care for it this time when it's not changed? Quote, "So Dominion is terrible. You never get the cards you want. In this game you always do," unquote. Now keep in mind, I don't like Dominion. It's a puzzle. I don't like puzzles. But games have to have disappointment built in somewhere. If it's not, if you always get what you want, it's not a game, it's a playground. This is self-delusion. And of course, to say Dominion is terrible without an explanation, or without a decent explanation, is pretty dumb when you're talking to a publisher. Quote, "Trust me, this is pretty much the best game you've ever played, guaranteed," unquote. Now, why would any sane person think this is likely? There are tens of thousands of games. How is it that you have the best game ever? And even if you think it's the best game ever, don't tell people that. They have to discover that for themselves. This is a lack of self-awareness or lack of proportion. There are more quotes than the ones I've given here, but some verge on or over the line of stupidity. Now, when you do work with a publisher, they will probably have suggestions. And any experienced designer, including myself, can talk about cases where publishers screwed games up. Nonetheless, they also make suggestions that are based on a great deal of experience and that make sense. You got to keep this feedback from the publisher at arm's length. Artistes take it personally. Professionals can't. Every observation or suggestion about your game is an opportunity for you to learn more and an opportunity to possibly improve your game. To summarize, unreasonable people rarely manage to work together successfully. Whether it's you or the publisher who is unreasonable, make sure you're not the unreasonable one. Thanks for listening.